So, pardon me, I'm sorry about that. Where were we? I thought that I was just kind of talking generally there, maybe not being too interesting while just kind of doing circuits of that little place because I enjoy the warthog so much. Let me try to home in on something that's a bit more relevant. Well, not directly relevant in that sense, more to something that might be of greater interest, a bit more of a thoughtful topic. Sorry, one moment while we shoot down the aircraft that are coming for us. On normal, that's so easy, they just get wiped out by this gigantic gun on the back of our car. Not the most exciting encounter for you, the viewer, maybe. It just happened before you knew it was happening, but it makes this place feel very alive when you're just playing it normally. Stuff just flies in out of nowhere. Nothing that dynamic or interesting happens in Halo Infinite, even though technically it could be happening at any given moment. It's just very bad at setting up that kind of moment. But sorry, where was I? We're back in this central area again. It's 3 groups we need to save. That was just 1. I think they get more interesting, these next 2. I'll talk a bit about that, but also just... Subject on my mind was... You all liked Albert Loos, I think. He's a... Adolf Loos, I'm sorry, Adolf. He was an interesting subject to talk about because... You know, very to the point of what's going on in this video game, what's wrong with the ones that followed it, and... Just an interesting character for his own beliefs, Loos was, and that's the more broad thought that I thought I could follow up with, which is that something I find very consistent across looking into video games. Here's a big stack of guys here. We'll set up the car to help them, right there. Sight for sore eyes, they've got wounded. I think this guy's worse than wounded. Now we can use this fun gun. What I was saying, Albert Loos, what I've found is that if you look at real art theory, like basically anything written before 1945 or that's particularly good since, what you'll find is that, or at least what I've found is that very often I can agree with it, not in the sense of like, oh yeah, that sounds appropriate to what was going on in painting 100 years ago. Like, I won't pretend, I have no idea, they could be making it all up for what I know, but what makes me trust it is that the general principles I can see playing out right now. And of course, Albert Loos was a brilliant example. He was talking about, basically, he was complaining about graphics tools and people who love these crappy Fern-ridden remakes the Fern makes of perfectly good video games, just defacement, visual busyness, and babble. All these things which we can recognize destroying things which didn't exist in his time, but he was talking about a true human impulse behind art, so it's very interesting and easily transposed onto other subject matter. That's the point I want to go into, that I think if something is true, it can be shifted across context very easily, transposed in that way. That goes for, I think, social theories. They should apply to multiple contexts, and criticism, if you're talking in principles of what is wrong with something, it should explain what is right or wrong with another thing. And, you know, the moronic babble which passes for criticism in our time, not just of video games, but film, everything, basically, it all just sounds arbitrary and made up because it is. Basically, they're just pulling things out of their asses, and you know, one thing is good because it's got the crunchy weapon sandbox, the next thing is good because of its well-realized Metroidvania with boomer, looter, shooter, extraction, traversal elements and mechanics. It's... people just make up words after the fact and, you know, tell themselves it's good because it was those things. You know, you can't actually think through the things these people say. Okay, we just tore through that while I was thinking. Good job, look at these guys go. Later. Anyway, so yes, it's very much many artists and art critics, what they say, if they're talking about sculpting, painting, architecture, writing, I think if it's really true, it makes sense divorced from the very specific thing they're talking about. Like, try to find a coherent principle in anything said on YouTube about a particular video game which can apply to, say, a movie you've seen. It's pretty much impossible, but again, just take like an art critic who's talking about painters 100 years ago, and like, you can swap in terminology for, just on the basic sense of like, replace painting with like the state of video games or independent video games, and you know, it's a perfectly sound argument still. Like, it sounds like they're talking about our own time. Loos, of course, is the obvious example, but there are a lot of these. Anthony Ludovici is a critic I very much like. He's very, you know, he's the Nietzschean art critic of his time. If you know your video game criticism history, you can see where I'm going already. Anthony Ludovici was very good at talking about personality and character and its influence upon the shape of art and the state of art, and again, just a point I bring up a lot, maybe not again in this context, or this series of talks, whatever we're calling them. A point I bring up a lot in various different things is that we're pretty much a fallen civilization. We have dropped the torch of culture in our own time. Men were just much smarter 100 years ago than they are now. The wealth of culture, transmission of knowledge, it was just incomparable to the state we're in today. It was just so much better. So a man like Ludovici really knew his stuff, and where I'm going with that is that Ludovici's thing was very much applying Nietzsche to criticism, and, you know, the principles of Nietzscheanism can be used to talk about many different forms of art and human practices and pursuits, and including video games, of course. Ludovici did not talk about video games, he did painting and sculpture and so on, but of course, as I just said, I believe that the principles carry over into video games very well, and someone actually did that. If you know your gaming you really well, then you know who Icy Calm was. He was, in my opinion, one of two really great writing-based critics of video games that we've had. Pretty much in the entire history of the damn thing, there have been two. Icy Calm, the one who's relevant for the minute. His thing was Nietzsche and video games, and that was pretty interesting. I really like his work. I think he was frankly really wrong a lot of the time about some fairly serious stuff, to the point it made him say fairly absurd and wrong things, but even at his worst, I would still say he was better than the vast majority of people. You know, he was still grounding the things he said in an understanding of humanity and a coherent understanding of humanity, and he could just make sound and principled cases for why he would like a thing. Were they good cases? Often no. I think he was he plays up the excellence of his own life. He's a bit of a character like that, but I think he's pretty obviously a rather neurotic and insecure character, and I think that he's at various points in different directions, he's always rebuilding what it's about, kind of getting caught up in basically putting the theory before what he actually likes and thinking about image, and just, he was an arcade guy at one point, then he was an MMO guy at one point. He made interesting cases for each one of these things, but one gets the impression that he was trying to steer himself towards games which he thought aligned with pleasing theories he had come up with, and that was interesting to watch happen, and it's not really a wrong way to do it. You do that, and basically you should do that as a kind of test, not an affirmation. And I got the impression that where Icy Calm kind of went wrong was, it wasn't so much like, okay, I have this idea on what makes the game good, I'm gonna play games in that direction so I have a better time. It was more like, I declare that this is what makes the game good, so every other game is shit and not even worth my attention, and of course these are the best games ever, I'm having the best time ever, all of you, you know, just idiots, you aren't playing only shoot-em-ups, and then you're all idiots because you're not only playing crappy Russian MMOs like me, and now it's become everyone is an idiot who's not playing pardon me, where he's gone now is, as far as I know, he plays like Dungeons and Dragons with his Discord friends, and that's his thing, and oh geez, I respect Icy Calm a lot for his writing, but if you watch him like streaming video games with his friends, like, whew man, the guy just is not charismatic when he speaks. I don't know how to put it. He just, all of the energy bleeds out of me when I look at it. It's the most uninspiring thing I've ever seen, and yeah, it just makes me think he's not having a great time, and that makes me think from there that, okay, the theories are clearly not only wrong, but they're like misleading him, and he decides that they're hills to, if not die on, at least waste years on, and it's a rather unfortunate way to be, I think. I respect Icy Calm a lot for trying to find coherent, steady principles behind what makes certain experiences enjoying. That's something I try to do myself, just, you know, I think he gets a kind of philosopher's myopia and, you know, basically wants a pleasing theory which will, you know, then just... then playing games is just an affirmation of that. It's almost a bit of the painted word thing going on with Icy Calm, where, you know, the point is the explanation of why he's enjoying the thing. It's not enjoying the thing. That's probably about as well as I can put it right now. I am a touch tired right now. But I might come back to that subject of Icy Calm. He's fascinating. Oh, sorry, story is happening. We found Captain Keyes. If you watch those early videos, the man who gave us our gun, the captain of our ship which crashed. Here's what I was talking about before. Look at them do their node hop. That man's node hopping, everyone is. They move to a new spot and then they run through their options. Are there aliens? Are there friendlies? And then they all just got the mental order. There is a ship landing. We all have to get on that and end the level. So let's go, people. And yeah, this is just a cool scene. We have like 5 guys out at once and it just looks very lively, especially when you're me and a kid. This game just feels like it's got loads going on. Look, we've got the aftermath of this gunfight, lots of explosions and such made by us. Scorch marks, people died here, it was very dramatic. There's like 5 guys running around to get on a spaceship. Very lively. But yes, where was I? Icy Calm, yes, he kind of mentally destroyed himself by trying to be too faithful to his questionable theories, I believe, and if there is another really great man of writing about video games, or at least one who I consider prominent and worth talking about, it is Top Drunky. And some of you know who that is, a lot of you probably won't. If Icy Calm is obscure, then Top Drunky is... pardon me, he is something else entirely, but another fascinating guy and kind of a weird polar opposite to Icy Calm. Naturally, they did not get along, they were very different in things. Icy Calm was a guy basically trying to do philosophy, and Top Drunky, he was a... how do I even describe that character? He was just a really extreme eccentric, the kind who just washed up on like 2000s internet all the time, just this... frankly, he was like a Sigma male, basically, just an extremely weird dude who instinctively dressed like an anime character, genuinely didn't give a fuck what people think, not in the sense of like, ooh, I've got to hold social frame and dominate this situation, like, no, the guy is genuinely half insane and just like incapable of caring about social norms. Anyway, this carried over into the way he posted on the internet. If you've seen me post on this site or that site, you might see that I try to go on at length but disrupt myself with, you know, lots of images, embedded videos, links, and so on. I do that because I went to the internet posting school of Top Drunky. If you want to get good at being, like, interesting online, you know, in a forum context, and they're the best way to post online, frankly, everything else sucks by comparison. Like, what are you doing wasting time on Twitter? Get in a forum. Anyway, like, how do you make a forum post interesting? Just learn to do what Top Drunky would do instinctively, which is to, you know, make use of every tool possible within BB code and turn, you know, what most people use as just a medium of text into, like, basically a little customizable magazine double-page spread every time you post in a forum. That was Top Drunky. You can find some of his handiwork still archived here and there on the internet. Any forum thread where he shows up, it's about him now, and he'll write, like, top quality, like, it looks like something out of, like, a gaming magazine, only the quality of thought and, like, the novelty is absurdly good by comparison, and a bit insane. And anyway, he was just a really fascinating guy who would show up in forums saying crazy shit, making these really lively, colorful posts full of media, and whenever he would talk about video games, which was all the time, he would say the most fascinating things about them. Because again, just, he doesn't give a fuck, which means he is, like, incapable of being contaminated with bad memes. He is instead a kind of source of memes himself, and You know, what is the problem of video game criticism right now? That it's basically idiotic rubes who are all insecure and can very easily be led to believe like, yes, crunchiness of the weapon sandbox, that is what makes the game good. It's ludo-narrative harmony, you know, idiotic babble like that. You can't convince a guy like Top Drunky that something that isn't good is good. He's just gonna speak his mind no matter what, like a drunk person, that's why he's Top Drunky. And yeah, just his legacy, are there any particular thoughts I would attribute to him or a school of thought? No, not really. He's just a fascinating person who blazed a lot of trails and was just very interesting to look at, and I agree with a lot of what he wrote, and if I'd found him when I was younger, I probably could have learned a lot. Instead, it's more like we came to the same conclusions, him through far more eccentric and probably interesting means, but he's not here, so how could I describe this project of mine here and my more general internet presence? I might say I am here to finish what Icy Calm and Top Drunky started, because unfortunately both of them have basically lost their minds and vanished. I won't get into each story, but yeah, sad stuff going on there. We've lost two kings here. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but I find that subject very interesting. Maybe you will too. Sorry about that, speaking in this like slightly hushed voice just strains my throat a touch. But yeah, let's talk about where we are. I'll talk about this level for a few minutes now just to fill this out, and then I've got another video to upload, I think. And I might even keep going. I'm just feeling good about this tonight. I enjoy this a lot. And I hope you do too. If you're enjoying this, then, you know, good on you. Even if it's not the best hour, I'll have like an hour of stuff for you to watch today, and I hope that fills some time that you want filled. And yeah, again, I really appreciate people watching these, but that sounds like a sign-off. I'm not signing off yet. I want to quickly, again, as I said, I've been not giving you the story. I can catch you up next video, but for now we're just on this strange plateau area. Again, we've got this brilliant drop-off, which I love, which helps counteract the fact that we are again in an outdoor room. Every level is a valley, but they do a very good job of... The most consistent way they hide that is just with cliffs. You don't feel like you're in a box if one of the walls is a sheer drop instead. That's a very ingenious move they made, and these big ominous spreads into nothing are I would imagine a not very resource intensive way to create a massive amount of scale for what it requires from your Xbox. It's just very ingenious work, lots of respect for Bungie, and yeah, we're not just on the ground, we're underneath a gigantic spaceship. And yeah, what do you think the object of this level is? We're going into that. That's why I've got this fancy rifle, we're doing some outside, long-distance infiltration violence. And then we're going to fight inside that ship. This level is a two-parter, and it's absolutely fantastic. Pardon me, my voice is straining a bit, but I'm enjoying myself so much I genuinely don't care. Another thing I want to point out before I do the last thing I'm going to do, they all have their lights on in this level, and I just think that's so cute and funny. Like, the lights actually work, and it's just a fun little detail, makes them look more like lively guys who actually have to do stuff for themselves. Now, you know what I have to do to you? I'm appreciating how nice this looks, all the browns and purples and the shining lights. Now, let's hurt ourselves. I didn't remember it being this bad. Do I need to say anything, or does it just speak for itself? Again, like, they turned all the ancient Prometheus engineer architecture into gaming PCs, but that wasn't enough. Even nature is a gaming PC now. Look at how much nonsensical, like, gamer color everything is covered in. Where is all of this light coming from? Where is the moon? Is it moonlight? Or is it just the entire galaxy is a gigantic gaming PC in this universe? Look how many, like, glowing constellations we can see, and each one is apparently like its own sun, just about for the amount of light it puts out. This is completely absurd. And then, here we go, and then look at that. That's like an 80s anime science fiction starscape. Look at that, that's fantastic. I'm not in the habit of editing these yet, but if I were, I would bring up pictures of things like Again, Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Mobile Suit Gundam, Armored Trooper Votoms, and if I were to bring up Western films, of course it would be Ridley Scott's Alien, Outland, I forget who directed that, the one with Sean Connery, you know, Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Space is meant to be this harsh, dark, imposing space. That's why it scares away everyone but cool men who ran America back when NASA was a thing. And, you know, now we have modern world and everyone's afraid of it, and they don't even want to, like, look at it in a fictional context, so they turned it into, you know, a gaming PC. You know, Halo is meant to be, like, this weird little thing, like, basically a giant kind of satellite-like structure floating in space, but now it's, you know, we're very terrestrial now. Like, don't worry, you aren't at risk of, like, falling off into the universe. We're basically on Earth, and it's the middle of the day, and we're crowded in by an absurd amount of foliage at any given time, so, you know, you will never have to deal with any feelings of bleak isolation or emptiness in this game about space. Don't worry, good god, it gets worse every time I look at it. And look at the spaceship as well, it glows, it's also a gaming PC. Like, that's a really beautiful design there. I really love the original. Like, it's got enough weird, like, curved edges and glowing spots that the human things wouldn't have to make it look distinct, but it's also its own kind of serious piece of machinery. You know, serious people made this thing to do serious work. And by contrast, what is that? That's like a, you know, that's some kind of gamer accessory. What are these absurd little... Do you despise that as much as I do? I hope you do. If you're the kind of person who doesn't, you probably wouldn't be watching this. But yes, just looking up on this level should make you angry. It does for me. And good god, I just noticed, look what they did to my poor sniper rifle. Look at this lean, mean, utilitarian beast. Look at this... just... pardon me. It's like, this is the kind of gun that gets invented in wartime. It's just this sleek, efficient combination of factory-made metal parts, which is made to efficiently do its job. This is a man's utilitarian machine. Both of my guns. And then look at this. Look at how they greebled this thing to absolute shit. What is all of this detail? Why is it covered in all of these different knobs and stuff? It's an operator YouTube gun now, I guess. It's where I put on all of my accessories, which I bought from Black Rifle Coffee, because I'm a real manly patriot who doesn't put up with those sissy libtards. I buy my AR-15 and I cover it in lasers and scopes and rails and grips, and I keep my trigger discipline up so that I can protect my egg wife from mean people on Twitter who have anime profile pictures. That's who cares about guns like this, in my mind, kind of. But no, that's just a kind of separate neuroses of mine. I hate gun people, obviously, but... No, sorry, what's happened here is this is a Nerf gun. This is like the arena looter traversal shooter gun. This is the, like, gun for an online multiplayer game where every character has purple hair. I'm sure you've noticed, like, yes, like idiot knight type characters, brief aside. When I say knight, I basically mean like Gamergate-brained moron who knows something is wrong but can't articulate it and likes picking low moronic fights in the name of like low, vaguely right-aligned politics. You know, just the knights understand that what's wrong with video games is vaguely in that direction, but yep, it's a diffusion of the violence innate in the form of a gun is how I think I would describe this sniper rifle. I found the words after a lot of tangents and false starts, so forgive me those, but it just doesn't look like a killing machine now, does it? It's very lame. There is a kind of violence in the simplicity of these guns. It's the violence in the form of the gigantic bald albino in Prometheus. It's just, again, it's what Adolf Loos said, to get back to that subject everyone loves. It's just, the progress of your civilization rides alongside the stripping away of ornamentation, and, you know, why do things lose ornamentation in wartime? On one side it's efficiency, yes, but, you know, what does efficiency mean? Like, yes, you need efficiency in war, which is to say, arguably, that, you know, efficiency strips ornamentation, which means that war basically forces you to reach a more advanced state or to die, and yes, one could say that, like, the ugliness and well, what some people call the ugliness, what I would just call the kind of sparseness and simplicity brought about by the utilitarian creations of a war. Some might call that just like the world getting uglier, but I think Adolf Loos might say, and I would say it as well, frankly, like, no, that is the world becoming more advanced. It can't afford and is growing beyond frivolousness. Maybe that's not entirely relevant if the person would, if they could bring back that kind of frivolous value, that ornamentation. So that's just a thought I'm exploring by talking it out loud. With the loose thing, again, I took my time with that video. I didn't make it for a long time, so the thoughts are a bit more formed. That was me saying things I had thought. This is more me thinking out loud. And this thing, again, it will be a bit of both, I think. But I think that I've about tapped this area of observations. Well, not really. Again, look at this horror show. We could talk about this for an hour, but I might spare you and call this video here, and we might actually play the game a little bit more in the next one. Thanks again for watching. I hope that even these more rambling videos, you can enjoy them a bit, and I'm still enjoying talking, so I might even keep going tonight. Thank you again.